Welcome to Hood Politics. In this episode, I will be discussing the story of Dedrick Gobert. The facts of the case are as follows. Dedrick Dwayne Gobert was born on November 25, 1971 in Shreveport, Louisiana, and afterwards moved to Los Angeles, California. Not much is publicly known about Dedrick's younger years, but he was known to spend a lot of time on the west side of South Central, frequenting the campus of Washington High School and Jesse Owens Park. He was also known to frequent a nearby mall in the neighboring Culver City called Fox Hills. It's been said that during his time hanging around Jesse Owens Park, Dedrick became affiliated with the rolling 90s neighborhood Crips. Dedrick decided to try his hand at acting and landed a role in the 1991 film Boyz in the Hood. Boyz in the Hood is a coming-of-age story directed by John Singleton in his directorial debut. It tells the story of a group of teens growing up on the west side of South Central Los Angeles. The film touches on gang violence, teen fatherhood, co-parenting, single-parent households, and the nature versus nurture debate. The film starred Cuba Gooding Jr. as Trey, Angela Bassett as Reva, Lawrence Fishburne as Furious, Regina King as Shalika, and Ice Cube as Doughboy. Dedrick played a character named Dooky in the film. Dooky was a member of Doughboy's friend group, known for his comedic puns and pacifier. The name Dooky would stick to Dedrick even after the movie wrapped. The film will go on to be nominated for an Academy Award and launch the careers of many of its actors. Singleton grew fond of Dedrick and would go on to cast him in future projects. Dedrick's next role was in the 1993 film Poetic Justice. The film tells the story of a grieving woman learning to love again. It stars Tupac Shakur as Lucky and Janet Jackson as Justice. Dedrick played the role of Lloyd, a local gang member who was looking to avenge a recently murdered friend. Singleton will go on to cast Dedrick a third time in the 1995 film Higher Learning. The film is about a group of college students searching for their identities as they navigate through classes, friendships, and relationships. Starring Omar Epps as Malik, Tyra Banks as Deja, Michael Rappaport as Remy, Busta Rhymes as Dreads, and some of Dedrick's Boyz in the Hood alumni, Ice Cube as Fudge, Regina King as Monet, and Lawrence Fishburne as Professor Phipps. Dedrick was simply credited as Fudge's homie and could be seen throughout the film hanging in the dorms and amongst Fudge's group of friends. But unfortunately, Dedrick wouldn't get to see himself on the big screen one last time. On the night of November 19, 1994, Dedrick and his friends, Maylee Gutierrez, Jenny Hun, and Ignacio Hernandez, went to a street race in Mariloma, California. Mariloma is an area about 40 miles east of Los Angeles in Riverside County. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Mariloma and the nearby city of Ontario were known for street racing. The long, newly paved, and unimpeded streets made for the perfect drag strips. During one race, tempers flared after Ignacio's car was cut off by another driver. Both men got out of their vehicles and began to fight. At least 10 other men surrounded Ignacio before police arrived and everyone ran back to their vehicles and fled the scene. Shortly afterwards, Dedrick, Ignacio, Melly, and Jenny drove to a nearby pizza parlor. When they got out of their car, the same group of men approached them and the two groups began to argue. One of the men put out a gun and pointed it at Jenny, but he put it away when an older member of his group said something to him. Maylee told the older man that she would get her group to leave if he did the same. The older man agreed, and the two groups parted ways. Dedrick, Ignacio, Maylee, and Jenny drove around for a while and saw a different group of men who were dressed in red and chanting blood. Maylee assumed they were blood gang members. Dedrick parked the car and approached the men. He flashed Crip gang hand signs at the group and said, "What's up, cuz?" The group of men charged Dedrick, threw him to the ground, and began to beat him. Ignacio and Melly ran to Dedrick's defense and attempted to shield him from the onslaught. Moments later, gunshots rang out. Melly saw a man shooting down at Ignacio. Shortly afterwards, the group of men fled the scene, and when the smoke cleared, there was a massacre. Jenny was shot in the neck, which left her paralyzed from the chest down. Ignacio was shot twice. One bullet entered his back and passed through his heart and lungs. The other bullet entered the back of his head and lodged under the skin of his forehead. Ignacio died at the scene. Dedrick was shot once in the back of the head. He also died at the scene. Detectives arrived at the scene and began their investigation. After speaking to witnesses, they found that the group of men suspected of the shooting were from a predominantly Asian gang called Acro Boys Crazy, also known as ABC. Acro's roots trace back to the Philippines. The group was initially formed as a fraternity, but in later years the group began to splinter and form different factions. Some of the factions stuck to being a fraternity, but others took a turn and became gangs. The Acro gangs later migrated to the United States and landed in places like Garden Grove, Anaheim, Riverside, and others. Some of the Acro gangs will go on to adopt the Blood and Piru gang identities. The Acro gang suspected of the shooting was a Blood of affiliated set. When asked about the suspect, Jeannie and Maylee weren't able to offer much information regarding the shooter. Investigators began tracking down known ABC members to question them about the shooting. Several ABC members denied being present or knowing anything about the incident, but a few members told detectives that a fellow ABC member named Sonny Enraka was the shooter. Enraka was arrested a few weeks after the shooting and taken in for questioning. Enraka initially agreed to talk to investigators, but shortly afterwards he requested a lawyer. However, later during the booking process, Enraka began to discuss the shooting with the booking officer, a detective named Spittle. Enraka told Spittle that Dedrick drove up and skidded to a halt in front of him and the other ABC members, grabbed something out of his car, and approached the group while throwing up gang signs. Enraka went on to say that the group initially just laughed it off, and Maylee told Dedrick, "Kick back, that's not them." But Dedrick continued to antagonize the group. A few moments later, Dedrick lifted up his shirt and motioned as if he had a gun, and that's when the ABC members rushed him, threw him to the ground, and began to punch and kick him. Enraka told the officer that he initially tried to break up the fight. When Ignacio tried to shield Dedrick, Enraka grabbed Ignacio by his hair, pulled his head back, and asked him where he was from, meaning what gang did he claim. Ignacio hit Enraka's hand, and Enraka shot him in the head. Ignacio continued to move, so Enraka shot him again. Enraka told Spittle that before Ignacio hit him, he planned to shoot into the air in order to break up the fight. He went on to say that he was afraid Ignacio was about to shoot him with the gun that he believed Dedrick had. Enraka said he shot Dedrick because Dedrick cursed at him and he believed that he was reaching for a gun. However, he admitted to never actually seeing a gun. Enraka went on to say that Jenny began attacking him and he intended to shoot into the air, right by her or over her head, but the bullet hit her. Enraka admitted to using a .38 caliber pistol, but said he threw it out of the car's window after the group fled the scene. Shortly after his confession, Enraka caught another ABC member named Eric Garcia from jail. He told Garcia that he confessed to the shooting and didn't want to get any other ABC members involved. A short while later, Enraka was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Dedrick Gobert and Ignacio Hernandez, as well as the shooting of Jenny Hun and numerous gun and gang enhancement charges. Enraka pled not guilty to all charges, citing self-defense. The prosecutor later announced that they would pursue the death penalty. Enraka's trial began on March 10, 1999. One of the prosecution's witnesses was an ABC member named Roger Boring. Boring said the group met at his home before going to the street races, and Enraka was drinking heavily and doing methamphetamine, also known as speed. He went on to say that Enraka had a revolver with him. Boring said after the street races, the group met in the parking lot of the pizza parlor, and shortly afterwards, Dedrick approached them, throwing up gang signs and saying "fuck slobs." He said the group initially laughed at Dedrick because he appeared drunk, but when Dedrick began posturing like he had a gun, the group rushed him. Boring went on to say that he saw Enraka shoot Dedrick, and when Ignacio attempted to shield Dedrick, Enraka shot Ignacio as well. He said that when Jenny kicked Enraka in the back, Enraka turned around and shot her. Another ABC member named Lester Maliwat also testified that he saw Enraka do the shooting. After the shooting, Enraka got into Maliwat's car. Maliwat asked him why he shot the girl, and Enraka replied, "Fuck him, they deserved it." It's important to note that Maliwat was charged as an accessory in this case, due to him giving Enraka a ride from the scene of the shooting, as well as being present when he tossed the gun out the window. But by the time of the trial, Maliwat had fulfilled all court-ordered requirements. The prosecutor stated that the bullets pulled from the victims were all .38 caliber, and Enraka told investigators that he had a .38 revolver that night and used it to kill the victims. Jenny testified that the bullet completely severed her spinal cord. As a consequence, she had difficulty breathing, could not tend to her bodily functions, and was confined to a wheelchair. She went on to say that she has no feeling below her chest, except for nearly constant pain in one arm that made sleeping difficult. She told the court that she was worried about who would care for her when her mother and younger sister could no longer do so. Ignacio's mother, Carmen Vera, also testified at the trial. She said Ignacio was a good boy and a good student. He wasn't in a gang, nor did he do drugs. After his death, Vera received a notice that he had been accepted into a mechanical engineering program. She went on to say that Ignacio's death hurt her and her younger son Emmanuel deeply. Vera went to a psychiatrist for 3 years. It took 2.5 years for her to tell Emmanuel of his brother's death. She told him that Ignacio was in New York with their family. Dedrick's mother, Carolyn Gobert, also testified at the trial. Gobert said her whole life changed after the murder. She was in psychiatric care, her attendance at work suffered, and she withdrew from her friends. She went on to say that her younger son's performance in school also suffered greatly. The defense also called ABC members to the stand. Daryl Aquero, John Frick, and Cedric Lopez were all current or former members of ABC. Aquero recalled Dedrick claiming to be a Crip gang member and saying "fuck you slobs." Aquero also claimed to have seen a shiny object stuck in Dedrick's pants after he lifted up his shirt. Aquero recalled yelling, "Oh shit, he's got a gun," and that's when the ABC members rushed Dedrick. He estimated that Dedrick was shot 2 minutes later. Frick and Lopez testified hearing Dedrick say he's not afraid to die and seeing Dedrick make a reaching movement where he was either lifting up his shirt or reaching into his waistband. Aquero, Frick, and Lopez all denied knowing who the shooter was. The defense argued that the eyewitness descriptions of the shooter did not match what Enraka was wearing that night. Molly Watt testified that Enraka wore dark pants and a light blue shirt, but 2 other witnesses, Marcus Freeman and Alfred Ward, testified that Enraka wore a white sweatshirt that night. However, Freeman admitted that Enraka put on the sweatshirt immediately before the shooting. A detective named Larry Dedrick said Ward initially told him that the shooter wore a black sweatshirt, but later said he wasn't sure what color it was. Enraka's attorney maintained that his client was acting in self-defense and only pulled his gun in an effort to stop the fight. He went on to say that Enraka believed that Dedrick and Ignacio were reaching for a gun, so he shot them to protect himself and others. He said that Jenny was attacking Enraka. He shot over her head in an attempt to scare her away, but the bullet struck her in the neck. During his confession to spittle, Enraka admitted to drinking heavily and consuming 2 lines of methamphetamine earlier that night. When asked how much alcohol he consumed, Enraka replied maybe 6, and that he was only buzzed because it takes a lot for him to get drunk. The defense called a psychiatrist named Dr. James Rosenberg to the stand. Rosenberg testified that methamphetamine can cause paranoia or manic depressive illness. He went on to say that the drug can cause someone to have an irrational fear that someone is trying to hurt them, and a minor threat may be perceived as a very severe and life-threatening situation. In Rosenberg's opinion, the case was consistent with methamphetamine intoxication, and adding alcohol intoxication to the mix would affect the person's impulse and judgment even further. The defense called on several witnesses who knew Enraka at different periods in his life. They called Enraka's extended family from the Philippines who cared for him until he was 8 years old. They also called family members who met Enraka when he was 14 and moved to California with his mother and stepfather. Everyone testified that Enraka was a great person, but he had lived a rough life. He was the product of rape and was routinely abused during his childhood. During his teenage years, Enraka ran away from home and found a family within ABC. He lived with their families and even started calling their mothers mom. The defense also called Enraka's Miranda rights into question. They believed that he didn't fully understand what they meant and was under the assumption that when he asked for a lawyer, any further statements couldn't be used against him. The defense also stated that the Philippines should have been notified of Enraka's arrest due to his green card status. The investigator that performed Enraka's initial interview after his arrest was a detective named Schultz. Schultz testified that he did read Enraka his Miranda rights, and Enraka signed a form saying he was willing to speak to investigators. And although Enraka did ask for a lawyer, anything he chose to divulge after that would still be admissible. In May of 1999, a jury found Sonny Enraka guilty with the murders of Dedrick Gobert and Ignacio Hernandez. He was also found guilty with the shooting of Jenny Han, as well as gang and gun enhancement charges. The defense immediately filed a motion for a new trial, citing jury bias, but it was denied. On July 23, 1999, Sonny Enraka was sentenced to death for the murders of Ignacio Hernandez and Dedrick Gobert. At the time of this video, Sonny Enraka sits on death row in San Quentin State Prison. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.